The envelope was the cheap kind you tear by accident. Past due, shouted and read across the top. And underneath, my name, spelled right, my address, also right, and a unit number I'd never rented. Unit 312, Dockside Storage. I almost threw it away. Then I looked at the amount, $216 and a late fee, and thought of the hollow places in my life where small bills go to hide. That has a way of sounding like something you forgot to be. I told the ceiling as if I needed a witness. At lunch, I drove to Dockside. The building was a rectangle with a bad haircut. Fluorescence made everything the color of aspirin. A teenager behind the counter asked for my ID and typed my name with a speed that told me he didn't need to look at the keys. "You're paid through last month," he said, surprised in a way that felt personal. "Whoever opened it put a card on file." "Whoever opened it," I repeated. He spun the screen. Authorized user, Gable Evan. Primary, Iris Kincaid. I didn't know an Iris Kincaid. "You can cancel the card," the kid offered, "but you'll need to clear the unit before we close it." "Clear what?" He shrugged. "Inventory's yours." Unit 312 was 3 floors up. Third corridor, left-hand side. The door was the indifferent blue of rental cars. Under the handle, a tape tab held a key the way a bandage holds a splinter. Not for long, but long enough. Inside smelled like cardboard and lemon cleaner. Boxes stacked waist-high, labeled in block print with a librarian's patience. Apologies I owe. People I stopped calling. Money I kept. Promises. Wins I took credit for. The thing I didn't do. The last one was a shoebox with a rubber band around it. On top of the boxes lay a small black recorder with a yellow sticker that said "Start" in a handwriting I recognized, the way you recognize your own shadow, not specifically, but as something that belongs. I pressed play. A woman's voice, level and careful. "Inventory yourself, Evan. If you don't, someone else will." I stood there until the lights timed out and the metal ceiling turned the room into evening. Somewhere outside, a forklift coughed like an old smoker. I thought about my car, how it sometimes forgets the lock if the remote is in my pocket, how many times I've told myself the city is kinder than it looks. I pressed stop, then start again, as if the instruction might change the second time. It didn't. I flipped the shoebox open. Inside, a single house key on a brass ring I recognized immediately. The key I'd kept after my sister moved out of the apartment we shared, the one I never told her I still had. The recorder's little red eye blinked, patient. "Okay," I said to the boxes. "Let's take attendance." Chapter 2, The Inventory. I started with money I kept, because I wanted the worst over first. Inside, copies of receipts, neatly stapled, a deposit I'd failed to log when I was assistant manager at Bellwether Printing, the cash I stuffed back into the drawer the next day and never mentioned, the raise I agreed to take early, which meant someone else waited 3 more months. Each sheet had a sticky note in that same block print, a date, a name, a room where it happened, front office, Thursday, rain. I recognized the days by their weather. Guilt is meteorological like that. In Apologies I Owe, there were index cards with names and instructions. Nate, explain why you quit the group without telling him. Mom, the voicemail you didn't return the week of the biopsy. June, the key. June is my sister. The key lay now in my palm, warmed from the box. I thumbed the tiny notch near the tooth, the one you only feel if you're trying to. The brass had dulled to a polite gold. At the bottom of the stack of boxes, taped to the concrete, a floor plan printed on cheap paper showed a room shape of a little X in the far right corner. Next to it, in that patient hand, under the tarp. I rolled the dolly out of the way. A blue tarp lay folded twice. Under it, a milk crate of Polaroids fanned like playing cards. The same room, different angles. In some of them, I was there, blurred at the edge like the photographer had flinched. In two, I stood at the open door, head down, counting something in my fingers. In the last one, the door was closed and the lights were off, and through the security grate, you could see a sliver of me, elbow mostly, like evidence that I knew how to leave. The recorder clicked to life without me touching it. If you leave now, you'll tell yourself you didn't. If you stay, you'll have to name things. Who are you? I asked the room. Not who you want, but not a stranger. I thought of the woman who handles the donations at our neighborhood thrift store, the way she stacks the same kinds of objects together. Brass candlesticks, mismatched mugs, frames with their paper placeholders. I thought of how kind she is to the things people give up, and how sometimes the things look grateful. I opened the thing I didn't do because titles like that itch. Inside was a printout of an email thread from 6 years ago with my name on it, asking whether the shop's row press needed the safety guard replaced. The owner replying that it could wait. Me not replying at all. 2 months later, a kid named Marco caught a sleeve and left 2 fingers on the floor. He started wearing dark gloves after that and didn't shake hands if he could help it. I had told myself a story, that I'd sent a follow-up, that I'd done what I could, that the owner had ignored me. The paper in my hand was a thinner story. I asked once, the answer was no, and I accepted that like weather. The recorder said nothing. The boxes said nothing. The key on the brass ring felt heavier than it should be. On the inside of the unit door, taped where I wouldn't see it until I left, another note. Back wall, top left, open last. Then call June. The top left box was small and light, and taped with precision that made my teeth hurt. I left it closed and sat on the tarp beside the milk crate of photos and listened to metal click in the rafters as the building cooled. That night, at home, my phone chimed at 3:11 a.m. Dockside, Unit 312, door opened. The app's alert icon, apparently I had an app now, glowed like an eye. I didn't move. My mind supplied a sound anyway. Tape lifting from paint, a box sliding on concrete, a recorder clicking on. Inventory yourself, the voice had said. If you don't, someone else will. I slept like a person pretending to be asleep. She called me at 7:03 a.m. The number was local. The voice matched the recorders. Level, careful, the kind you trust until it reminds you not to. Good morning, Evan. I want to know how you knew about the key, I said. No hello. I can be that kind of person when scared. We'll get there, she said. Do you want coffee? You don't take it sweet. How do you know that? You used to leave the sugar packets in the bowl, she said, even when you took one. You don't like free things that aren't actually free. Who are you? A curator, she said, and a clerk. You opened the storage unit in my name. I opened the storage unit for you, she said, in your name because you will need the receipts. I don't want it, I said. You don't want the room, she corrected. You want what's inside not to be true. I pictured myself throwing the boxes into the hallway, letting the kid at the desk watch on the security screen while I invented a scene about identity theft. What do you want? To stop the auction, she said. What auction? The one an opportunist is preparing. He has an audience. He believes pain needs witnesses. He will try to sell yours. How? By telling your story for you, she said. By being first. And you're the... what? The benevolent thief? I'm an archivist, she repeated. I collect before someone else disposes. And you want what from me? An inventory, she said. Start with the top left box. I am at work. You're at your kitchen table. The invoice on your screen is for a job you won't get paid for, and you know it. I looked down like she could see my hands. The invoice did not flinch. Who are you to me? I asked. Did we meet? We met. You were holding a Ranshan not looking at me, because the machine was louder than I was. Bellwether. The roll press. A kid in gloves, a woman in a yellow hard hat whose face I can't pull into focus anymore because my memory protects me from being the villain. I asked about the guard, I said, stupidly, as if that cleans me. You did. You asked once. When the answer was no, you folded the question and put it in your pocket. I'm not here to punish you, Evan. I'm here to make it harder for other people too. By building a museum to my mistakes? By leaving you a map, she said. Open the box. Then call June. The call ended as precisely as it began. I listened to the dial tone like a person who has never lived in a world without one. I took the top left box to my table and cut the tape. Inside was a small plastic badge with my face and the word visitor printed along the bottom. The logo read St. Ansel Recovery Clinic. I had never been. Behind the badge, a single-page copy of a visitor log. Evan Gable, room 214, 4:05 p.m. The signature beside my name wasn't mine. Next to the entry in pencil, someone had written, I left after the first story. Underneath that, a date that made me cold in the soft places. I called June. She answered on the second ring and made it sound like she was afraid I was a bill collector. Hey, I have a minute. You have 10 years. Use any of them. I found the key, I said. You kept the key. Do you want to be right or do you want to talk? Both, I said. Sorry. She exhaled something that might have been a laugh if it had more food in it. What's wrong, Ev? I think someone made a room out of me and then alphabetized it. June is younger by 3 years and has been older than me since she was 9. Tell me where. I'll bring coffee. I don't take it sweet either. Chapter 4. The Visit. June arrived with 2 cups and a face that forgave me in increments. We drove to Dockside and rode the freight elevator like we were moving into a bad past. She read the labels without flinching, the way a sister reads the contents of your fridge. Judgment withheld, inventory first. When she saw the thing I didn't do, she touched the shoebox lid with 2 fingers, as if checking a forehead for fever. She said, I remember the day you called. You said you were fine and also that a kid at work got hurt and also that you didn't want to talk. It was a good impression of a man calm enough to be believed. I said, it was easier that way. For you, she said, then softer, for me, some ways are easier if you talk. We sat on the tarp. June slid the visitor badge between 2 fingers like a coin. St. Ansel. Why would you go there? I said, I didn't, but someone wrote my name. She said, you were always good at being plausible. Maybe someone borrowed that. As if she'd heard us, the recorder clicked and the same patient voice said, borrowing is the first step to returning. June looked at the machine like it was a pet she didn't trust. Is she recording us? I said, it's just messages, I think. June tucked her hair behind her ear and stood. I want to meet her. People who alphabetize other people need to answer questions. So do people who keep keys, I offered. She said, I brought coffee. That earns us 1 truth each. We made a deal like children and left the unit with the door closed. On the way down, a man in camo jacket held the elevator for a woman with a potted plant. Fleeing and moving in look identical for the first few minutes. I turned the visitor badge over in my pocket and thought about the date written in pencil and what it costs to admit the year has changed around you. At home that night, a new alert. Unit 312 door opened. Then a second. Unit 312 door closed. Then a text from an unknown number with a picture of my unit door and the caption, claim it or we will. The profile icon was a black circle with a white gavel inside it, like justice in clip art. June called before I could. She said, I got the same picture. They sent it to Mom too. Mom doesn't even... Ev, she said. It found her anyway. Chapter 5. The Open House. Iris didn't give me an address. She gave me a door color and a smell. Blue door, she said on the phone. Smells like oranges and dust. If you get to the service stairwell, you've gone too far. The building was a rehabbed office block filled with businesses whose signs used the word studio. The blue door had a brass number that had fallen off once and been put back upside down. Inside smelled exactly like oranges and dust. The room had acoustic foam on the walls and a folding table with a recorder and a little printer. Notes stacked in precise rectangles. A person could live here if they considered living to be something you do with paper. Iris stood at the far end looking at a corkboard where index cards lived under pushpins. She was smaller than I remembered, and sharper, her hair pinned in the way of people who don't want strands in their eyes when they're polite. "You brought your sister," she said, not turning. "Good." June's arms were crossed in the posture of protected children. "Why my mother? Why send that picture to her?" "I didn't," Iris said. "He did." "Who is he?" I asked. "A boy who believes archives belong to whoever opens them. He calls himself Knox. He runs a channel that treats confession like spectacle. He's been watching me for months." "And you set up a storage unit in my name?" June said. "How is that not spectacle?" "I prefer exhibit," Iris said, and even I wanted to flinch. She turned then, properly, and for a second her face didn't match her voice. Less composed, more tired. "You asked my brother's permission." "When?" I asked. "The day after the press, in the break room. You were holding a wrench and looking at the wall. I asked if you wanted a record in case the owner tried to turn the story. You nodded. I wrote your email on a clipboard. You didn't answer the follow-up." "I don't remember," I said, aware of how cowardly that sounds when said by adults. "You remembered enough to feel tired every time you touched the wrench. People remember in their muscles." June only exhaled. Iris moved to the table and laid 3 photos side by side. My unit door, my mother's phone lit with the same picture, a third image, a man's hand on the unit door handle. "Knox," she said. "He takes what isn't his and calls it commentary. He's going to auction your boxes. He thinks the money is attention." "What do you want from us?" June asked. "To be first, to publish the inventory before he does." "I won't be a video," I said. "You'll be a list," she said. "A boring one you own." June picked up the visitor badge from the table where I'd placed it. "St. Ansel. What is room 214? "Nurse's lounge. Coffee and grief. Your father went there once." "Our father is dead," June said. "Before that," Iris said gently. "He did the work and didn't finish it." We were quiet in the way rooms go quiet for funerals that happened years ago. "My father," Iris added after a moment, "was the man who installed the guard the week after Marco's accident. He used to come home with slices of weather in his hair." "And you?" I asked. "I make lists. Sometimes for other people. Sometimes against worse people." June nodded once, the way you'd nod when you don't want to give approval but your body insists on fairness. "What do we do?" Iris handed me a yellow legal pad. "Write," she said. "What you took, who it cost, what you intend to return." "You want me to confess on stationery?" "She want you to build a receipt. Receipts are hard to resell." The printer on the table chirped and spit a small label with a barcode and the number 312-07. Iris peeled it and stuck it to the corner of the legal pad. "Itemized," she said. "We will bore him into losing interest." June smiled beside herself. "I like her," she whispered, "and I hated that I did too." I wrote until my hand hurt, and then wrote with the other hand. Wins I took credit for turned into a list of artless sentences about ideas I called mine because I was quicker with email. People I stopped calling became phone numbers I would have to dial, and what I would say when the voice on the other end remembered me in a way that hurt. When I ran out of nouns, I wrote verbs. Corrected, avoided, closed, accepted. Verbs are worse. They don't hide. Iris printed labels as I spoke. June proofread like a teacher who had survived several generations of boys like me. When we got to the thing I didn't do, I went quiet, and so did the room. "I asked once," I said, and the sentence sounded like the first step on a broken stair. June waited. And when he said no, I stopped asking. "And Marco?" Iris prompted. "Marco learned to tie his shoes with 3 fingers. He kept working nights. He avoids crowds. He forgave me in a way I don't trust. You trust rules more than people, Iris said. Rules didn't help him either, I said, harsher than I meant, and then I caught myself and said, sorry. Iris made a small mark on a pad I couldn't read. June leaned back in her chair. We need to find Knox before he turns this into a show. He already has, Iris said. We can decide if we want to open for him or end the performance. How do we end it? I asked. By returning what we can and making a line for the rest. She slid a stack of returned labels across the table. They looked like the stickers libraries use when a book comes back overdue. I held one between fingers and thought of the way glue smells when you realize a mistake may be reversible. That night, June and I drove to Bellwether. The new assistant manager, a woman named Arya, whose forearms looked like she lifted everything that needed lifting, let us in. Marco was there, sweeping sawdust with the careful strokes of a man who has learned patience because he had to. I brought a sticker, I said, because jokes are the bandages I keep in my pockets. He laughed in a way that untied my throat. He said Iris told me. She said she's trying to cancel the show. I corrected her that she's trying to build a receipt, and he nodded like that was an upgrade. We went to the roll press. The guard was newish. Someone had bolted a little sign to the frame, lock before cleaning. I placed the returned label under the sign and wrote with a marker, requested again. Marco watched my hand. I don't need you to be a better person. I need you to be a louder one. I can try, I said. Don't try, practice. When we left, my phone buzzed with a text and a link. Live in 5. Knox presents Box 312. The thumbnail was a picture of a storage unit door. Not mine, but it looked like mine in the way rooms in these buildings look like each other. Blue, indifferent, tempting. June squeezed my arm. She said we go home. If he opens our door, he'll be disappointed. I know he won't be. He'll be louder. Chapter 7. The Auction. Knox stood in front of his camera in a room full of strangers' boxes and said words like accountability and sunlight to excuse what he was about to do. He wore black because people who want to believe themselves neutral often do. He sliced the box open and read a label out loud, someone else's label, full of a life that was not his to sell. When he held up a photograph of a man in a hospital bed and said, "What are we looking at here?" my stomach folded in on itself. Iris's group chat, people like us with rooms that didn't belong to the world, fizzed like a shaken soda. That's mine. He took it from the East Wing. He called my mother. He's saying names. Iris sent one message. We go now. An address followed. Industrial Road, North End. Warehouse sublet. We arrived to 3 police cruisers, a camera crew for a local station that would kill 15 minutes between advertisements with our pain, and a line of angry people holding their own receipts like weapons. Knox stood on a makeshift stage, hands raised, expression pious. He was saying, "It's public interest," when we got close enough to hear, "You keep secrets that hurt people. We are the people." "You're a person with a ring light," June said under her breath. Iris didn't go to the stage. She went to the side door. A security guard with a sunburn and a conscience asked for her badge. He handed her the visitor card to St. Ansel. He glanced at it and stepped aside because authority doesn't have to make sense to work. Inside, the room smelled like tape and indignation. On a table, a row of boxes with labels in Iris's handwriting. Our boxes. A camera pointed at them like a rifle. Iris walked to the camera and switched it off. Knox's voice from the hallway rose half an octave. "Hey," a man said behind us, stepping out from behind a stack of crates. He was smaller than his voice and younger than you want people like him to be. His sentence ended when June turned and looked at him with the expression she reserves for men who mistake access for invitation. She said, "We're taking our property. Call whoever you need to call." He called Knox. Knox arrived in a heat wave of righteousness. "You don't get to hide. People deserve to know. They deserve to be asked and to answer before you speak for them. You're a gatekeeper. I'm a clerk. I label. You're a thief." He smiled for the absent camera. "You curated evidence, and you left it in public. Private isn't a moral crime. It's a place people can breathe. You're protecting him," he said, pointing at me in the childish way of people whose arguments need fingers. "You hurt someone and kept it quiet. And I told it, on purpose, to the person it belongs to. Who cares?" he said. And there was the truth. He wanted the sound of the story more than the story. "Your audience will," Iris said, and turned the camera back on. Not his, hers. She pointed it at herself. "This is a receipt. Itemized, boring, unprofitable. I helped build a room where a man could see himself in neat stacks. He's returning what he can. If you'd like spectacle, I can recommend another channel." Knox laughed, but the sound thinned. His assistant looked at the floor the way people look at floors when the script slips. The security guard stood in the doorway and pretended to be in charge of something. We picked up our boxes and left through the side door. Outside, the cruisers yawned and the camera crew chose the louder scene. June drove. Iris sat beside her with the returned labels in her lap, like a deck of cards she intended to deal fairly. I said, "He won't stop." "No," Iris said, "but he might have to find someone noisier."
Chapter 8. The Room 214 Problem. There are problems you put off because you prefer them unsolved. Room 214 was one. The visitor log said I'd gone. The badge said I was allowed. My memory said I hadn't. I went. St. Ansel's smelled like detergent and secrets. The receptionist asked if I had an appointment. I held up the badge and said I'm late, which is the truest sentence I've spoken in years. Room 214 had 2 couches, a coffee urn working very hard, and a bulletin board filled with the kind of flyers that make you cry without giving you permission. A nurse with a tired bun poured coffee for herself and for me, the way people who don't need thanks pour coffee. "I was here once," I said to her as she stirred powdered creamer into her cup. She looked at me and decided I was telling the truth in the only way that matters. It sounded like I wanted to be. "You left early," she said. "You said you had a group call at 4:30. "I don't remember." "People don't," she said. "It's a function. You store the fact of the visit, not the visit." "Why did I come?" She nodded toward the hall. "A man from Bellwether, brought in by a friend. He wouldn't tell his sons, he wouldn't tell his God. He told the coffee machine and the floor and me. You sat and didn't talk and left before it got good. I closed my eyes because some rooms encourage that. Did he?" "She did some of it. He said the rest to whatever happens after coffee. That counts in ways the boys don't understand." "His name?" "Not mine to give you," she said gently, "but you know it under your tongue." On the way out, the receptionist stopped me with a hand like a bird landing on a branch. She said, "Someone left this for you." She handed me an envelope with EV on the front in a thin, careful hand. Inside, a Polaroid of a table, mine, covered in a legal pad and labels and a single returned sticker stuck to my thumb like a joke. On the back of the photo, a sentence. "You didn't stay then. You can stay now. -I." I put the picture in my wallet because there are worse things to carry than someone else's belief in your next good decision.
Returning is a muscle. Mine had atrophied. I started with small weights. A call to Nate, who answered with theatrical suspicion, and ended with a laugh I'd earned a decade too late. A voicemail to my mother that said, "I'm sorry for learning slow." And then, after her callback, I kept June's key. Silence. Then the softest, "I know." At Bellwether, Arya made me file a hazard report for a machine that wasn't broken just so I could feel the paperwork close like a door with a good latch. Marco brought donuts I didn't need and ate 3 of them in front of me to make a point about men who confuse punishment with progress. June watched all of it, like a foreman, making sure we didn't skip steps. Iris sent a list of names with simple instructions. Call. Listen. Don't argue. Label only after they do. Knox tried to keep the heat. He posted a clip of my money I kept box and wrote a caption about embezzlement that wasn't. Exactly. Iris replied with a screenshot of the deposit journal with my correction circled in yellow. People in the comments did what people do. Some shouted, some shrugged, some said they were tired. In the end, noise chooses easy prey. He moved on to someone who would feed him with rage. We watched that too, because it's hard not to watch a fire, even if you have no water. I met Iris at the Blue Door with a bag of hardware store hang tags. For what? She asked, taking them like she loves office supplies too much to refuse a gift. For after returned, I said, so we don't just stop. She smiled in the small way of people who know victories are not a guarantee, but are willing to register them. I have something for you too, she said, and pulled a tiny brass key from her pocket, a twin to the one I had given June. It opens a drawer in Unit 312. Another box? A smaller room, she said, for after the receipts. In the drawer, I found the single card. On it, 2 lines in her careful hand. Keep what you needed then. Return what you needed to stop needing. I stared at it until the words softened and moved back into the ink where they belonged. I don't know how to choose, I said. She do, she said. You're just afraid of being wrong in a new way. Is there a list for that? She tore a small square from the corner of the card and wrote "try" on it. She taped it to my wrist like a hospital band. Now you're admitted, she said. We laughed, and the laugh felt like a room with a window. Chapter 10. The Quiet Receipt. Inventory takes time. Return takes more. Months later, the unit still smells like cardboard and lemon cleaner. The boxes are fewer, the labels are crossed out in neat ink with a date next to each line like a memory's timestamp. June and I meet at Dockside sometimes with coffee and no performance. We open promises and see which ones survived. We add to we never would have believed ourselves capable of. Call mom on Tuesdays. Tell each other when we're about to be brave. Iris keeps the blue door and the oranges and dust. People come through with rooms she doesn't open without asking. She prints labels and insists on boring receipts. She is relentless about boredom. It is her mercy. I still carry the picture from St. Ansel. When I pay for something in cash, the edge of the photo sometimes peeks over the bill, like a small audience. I don't mind. The only time I feel watched is when I'm about to lie to myself. It's useful. There is a night I think about often. Not a dramatic night, not a night with auctions or sirens. A Tuesday, late. The dockside hall was quiet enough that you could hear moths attempt to fluorescence. I stood with the unit door open, and the boxes that were left made a shape that felt less like a room and more like a sentence. I peeled a return sticker and pressed it to the last index card in Apologies I Owe. June, the key. Done. I wrote the date. Then, without thinking, wrote thank you under it because apologizing without gratitude is half the job. I closed the unit's metal mouth, and the lock clicked like a small good decision. On the way to the elevator, my phone buzzed, an alert I didn't need anymore. Unit 312, door closed. Under it, a second line, inventory updated. I stopped and looked down the hallway the way you look at the hallway of a house you used to live in. The kid at the desk would be on his phone.
The cameras would be doing their unromantic work. Somewhere, Knox would be finding a louder fire to feed. Back home, I placed the two keys on my table: June's old brass, Iris's tiny drawer. I kept neither. June's lives on a hook by her door now, where guests hang coats. Iris's sits in a dish at the blue door with a label that reads, "For whoever finished a list today." People take it and return it, the way you do with objects that mean more as symbols than as metal. As for me, I keep a single card: keep, return, in my wallet behind the picture of the sticker on my thumb. Some days I'm good at choosing. Some days I reach for the wrong pocket and find the old habits waiting like coins. When people ask what was in the unit, I tell the smallest inventory that stays true: boxes, labels, a recorder that told me to do something I would have avoided otherwise. If they ask who opened it for me, I say a curator, and a clerk, and a sister who brought coffee. If they ask if I felt exposed, I say yes, but less than I do when I'm lying to someone who has to carry the lie. If they ask how it ends, I say it doesn't. I say it inventories. I say the only rule we wrote on the inside of the unit door before we closed it the last time: don't wait for the auction. Then, I go home and pour coffee I don't sweeten and call my mother on Tuesday and text Marco a picture of a hazard form filed on time. I look at the legal pad on my table, numbers down the side, dates across the top, and I feel the relief of a person who has proof of something and no one to sell it to but himself. Quiet receipts, boring labels, a room that used to be made of me and is now mostly made of air. That's my ending for today. The kind you can stack on a shelf and reach for when the loudness starts again.